Hello mga students. For this video lecture, pag-usapan natin yung dalawang approach sa costing, yung tinatawag natin na absorption costing at yung isa naman yung variable costing. Kung makikita ninyo dito sa ating title, your absorption or open and close parenthesis, full. So that absorption costing is also called full costing, samantalang yung variable costing naman ay tinatawag natin na direct costing. Now, sa video lecture na ito, conceptual discussion muna tayo. Establish muna natin yung ating knowledge about these two approaches, these two costing methods, and then sa susunod na video lecture, doon natin pasadahan yung computation. Okay? Para at least makita nyo muna yung concept at i-apply natin ito later on. Now, ano ba ang difference? Actually, guys, class, the difference between absorption costing and variable costing relies on the cost behavior. Whether meron ba tayong tinatawag na variable cost at saka yung mga fixed cost. Okay? O dito makikita ninyo yung summary. Pag absorption or full costing tayo, ano ba yung ginagawa natin dito? Samantalang yung nasa kanan naman, paano naman kapag ito ay variable costing? Okay? So tig 3 3 bullet points. Umpisahan muna natin lahat, discuss muna natin lahat etong nasa kaliwa bago natin pag-usapan yung nasa kanan. Now, under the absorption or full costing, it treats the cost of all manufacturing components. And when we talked about the manufacturing component, this is your production costs, your direct materials. Please take note of the tawag nito, abbreviations na ginamit natin dito. DM stands for direct materials. DL stands for your direct labor. Now, etong VMOH stands for variable manufacturing overhead, and then the FMOH stands for the fixed manufacturing overhead. Now, kung dati yung manufacturing overhead magkasama, dito kailangan nating paghiwalayin. Kasi ito yung isa sa mga distinction nila later on kapag pinakita na natin yung differences. So yung ating manufacturing overhead, inahati natin doon sa mga variable, yung behavior niya, at saka yung mga fixed cost naman. Okay? Ulitin ko lang, yung ating mga manufacturing cost under the absorption costing, yan po ay inventoryable or product cost. Remember, ito yung napupunta sa balance sheet muna. Okay? In accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles or GAAP. So that your absorption costing, it is what is reflected in your financial statements. Kung ano yung makikita ninyo, kung paano yung classification. Kasi dito pinapakita more a functional presentation or functional classification. Now, another one. Costs incurred in the non-manufacturing areas of the organization are considered period cost. Okay? Kung ito, pinag-uusapan yung product cost, dito naman, sa pangalawang bullet point, sino naman yung kinukonsider as period cost? Ito daw, yung mga non-manufacturing expenses. Okay? And they are expensed in a manner that properly matches them with revenues. Of course, following our accrual basis of accounting. Okay? Yung matching principle natin between your revenue recognition and then your expense recognition principles. Pangatlo, absorption costing presents expenses on an income statement according to their functional classification. And I forgot to highlight the terms, but remember your functional classification. Sa mga naging estudyante ko or sa mga na-discuss naman ito in financial accounting and reporting, financial classification is a type of classifying expenses according to the nature of the expenses. Kunwari, cost of goods sold, selling expenses, administrative expenses. Sinusort natin, ginugroup natin sila according to the nature, kung ano yung principal purpose ng expense na yun. So yan po yung ating absorption or full costing by the books, by the theory, by concept. Ano naman ang variable or direct costing? Una, Pag sinabi kasi natin na variable costing, ito ay isang cost accumulation method na including only, dito guys and comparing it dito sa bullet 1 sa absorption costing, hindi po kasama dito yung fixed manufacturing overhead. Ang sinasama lamang ay yung direct materials, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overhead. Why? Because yung fixed manufacturing overhead, tinitreat po ito as a period cost. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya kinakapitalize, hindi siya inventoriable. Hindi siya kasama sa product cost. Kasi 'di ba, ang product cost nagiging expense lang ito kapag nabenta na. Pero kapag hindi pa yan nabebenta, balance sheet muna siya. Okay? Therefore, income statement typically presents expense according to the cost behavior. Variable ba ito? Fixed ba ito? Okay? Although, yung mga expenses, pwede rin niyang may subcategory. And it can be presented by functional classifications within the behavioral categories. So kung halimbawa, doon sa ating period cost, okay? Or ito, no, mga fixed non-manufacturing expenses, pwede rin nating i-identify selling expenses, administrative expenses. So pwede naman yon. But here, we are more, ang orientation, we are leaning towards the cost behavior rather than the functional classification. Okay? I know it may take a lot for you to visualize kung or to absorb ano ba yung tinutukoy nito. Mas maintindihan naman ninyo ito pag nag-present na tayo. Ang key difference nitong dalawang klaseng method na ito, una, yung cost accumulation. Under the absorption costing kasi, eto, binibigyan lang natin ng emphasis, no? Binibigyan natin ng DN. Kasi yung fixed manufacturing overhead, treated yan as product cost. Samantalang period cost yan sa variable costing. Now, under absorption costing kasi, ang mga proponents ng absorption costing, sinasabi kasi nila na yung produkto hindi yan magagawa or cannot be made without the production capacity provided by the fixed manufacturing overhead cost. Ano ba kasi yung mga common example natin ng fixed manufacturing overhead? O yung ating mga factory rent, o yung ating mga property taxes. Usually mga fixed expenses ito, no? Tag natin yan as fixed manufacturing overhead. At yung mga proponents nitong method na ito, nitong approach na ito, sinasabi nila na hindi ka naman kasi makakabuo ng produkto kung hindi mo yan i-incur kasi part ng production capacity yan, no? Kaya dapat isasama siya sa product cost. Samantala kasi, ang sinasabi ng variable costing proponents, yung fixed manufacturing overhead cost, may incur mo pa rin yan. Okay? Kahit na walang production. Sabi dito, no, it would still be incurred whether any products are manufactured. Ibig sabihin, kung may production man or wala, may incur pa rin natin itong mga fixed manufacturing overhead cost. Yung renta, kahit tigil operasyon, babayaran mo pa rin yan. Yung pasahod ng mga production supervisor, kasi usually they are paid on a monthly basis. So kahit mahina, matumal yung production, kailangan pa rin sila bayaran at the full amount. Therefore, etong mga cost na ito, they are not driven, they are not caused by production. At dapat hindi siya ika-classify as product cost. So that is their differences of opinion, differences of this of concepts or of principles in terms of cost accumulation. Pangalawa, dito sa cost presentation. Yun nga, di ba? Ang classification natin by function. Samantalang dito, una by behavior and then possibly by function. Okay? So, cost presentation, absorption costing, functional yung classification. Pag variable costing, ano muna? By behavior. Variable ba yan or fixed? And then, subclassification na. Pwedeng by function. Yun po ang difference ng absorption costing versus the variable costing. Now, tignan po ninyo maigi. Coming from this exhibit. This is your absorption costing model. Makikita ninyo dito, ano? Familiar naman na kayo dito. Paano from the balance sheet na pupunta ito sa ating income statement. Okay? At saka yung different types of cost. Your DM, DL. Absorption costing ito, kaya yung buong manufacturing overhead, pinagsasama natin. And then, of course, ito ay napupunta sa work in process. Kapag nabuo na yan, kaya nga, through the cost of goods manufactured, matatransfer ito sa finished goods. At kung ano man yung mabenta, that is your cost of goods sold. Now, pagdating doon sa income statement, makikita mo, no? Revenue less cost of goods sold equals your gross margin or gross profit. Sa managerial accounting or sa cost accounting, yung gross profit natin, yung profit, ang tawag din natin dyan, margin. Kaya nga dito makikita ninyo, gross margin. Okay? Gross profit, gross margin, parehas po yan. Pero mas ginagamit natin yung term na margin sa cost accounting and managerial accounting. Less. Ito na yung ating mga bifunctional classifications, di ba? Of course, this is also included as a functional type. Selling, administrative, and other expenses. Pag nabawas na yan, that is your net profit, okay, or income or loss, or income before income taxes, before applying the tax effect. Yan po yung ating absorption costing model. Now, tignan niyo pagdating sa variable costing. Sinasama lang natin yung variable manufacturing overhead. Yun lang kasi yung ating product cost na mapupunta sa WIP through the cost of goods manufactured, okay, para malipat sa finished goods at pag naibenta, okay, sa cost of goods sold. Pero dito, pansinin ninyo, ang tawag sa cost of goods sold, variable cost of goods sold. Kasi etong mga ito, puro yan variable. Direct materials and direct labors, they are variable, no? They are dependent on the production. Direct materials are dependent on the number of units to be produced, number of items to be made. Direct labor, especially yung ating mga production workers, no? They are paid on a per hour or daily basis. Kung walang production, wala ding mga trabaho yung mga yan. So, by the behavior, they are variable costs, no? Now, tignan niyo, no? Your income statement part, revenue less your variable cost of goods sold equals your product contribution margin. Hindi po siya yung gross margin. Unlike dito, ano? Gross margin. Dito, pag binawas mo yung mga variable COGS, that is your product contribution margin. Please take note now. Yung period cost mo, kasama na si fixed manufacturing overhead. Pero, tignan ninyo, yung variable non-manufacturing expenses, naka-prioritize, no? Inuna muna siyang ibawas. Variable period cost, variable non-manufacturing expenses. Forward natin siya dito, no? Product contribution margin less variable non-factory expenses that are classified as selling, administrative, and other types of expenses. Pag binawas natin yan, ito yung tinatawag natin na total contribution margin. Okay? Product contribution margin less your variable non-manufacturing expenses, that is your total contribution margin. At dito, magkasama na yung ating fixed component, fixed manufacturing overhead costs, and then the fixed non-manufacturing expenses. Okay? They are combined. Nasa bottom siya, no? At pag naibawas natin yan, okay, yan na yung tinatawag natin na income before income taxes or net profit or net loss, no? Before tax effect. So you see the difference between the two costing model, no? So nag-reorganize tayo, nag-rearrange tayo ng mga costs. Now, please take note, no? Putting it into a different visual, no? Different perspective. Okay, no? Yung ating total contribution margin from the variable cost, no? Yung cost model natin ng variable. Yung contribution margin, that is the the sum of your total fixed cost and then the income before tax. Okay? Now, please take note of this, no? Although nabanggit ko na rin ito, pero added emphasis, yung cost of goods sold under a variable costing method, ang tawag natin dyan, variable cost of goods sold. Kasi it is composed only of the variable production cost. And then we also have your product contribution margin, which indicates how much revenue is available to cover all period expenses and to provide net income. Ito talaga yung ano no, magkano yung net income, magkano yung ano natin, product contribution margin. Pag nabawas na natin yung mga cost na directly attributable doon sa product, yung ating mga variable costs, no? So that is your product contribution margin. Then, yung total contribution margin mo naman, which is etong nandito sa baba, it indicates the peso. Please take note kasi foreign author tayo, naka-dollar yon. Palitan lang natin, gawin lang natin itong peso value. Okay, the total contribution margin indicates the peso available to contribute para ma-cover yung iba pang mga fixed expenses. Mapa-manufacturing man yan or non-manufacturing. Okay, and to provide net income. Now, this income statement using the variable costing method is also called your contribution income statement. Okay? Consider this one. Ang variable costing for presentation, for reportorial requirements, no, for external reporting purposes, dinidisallow po yan. Ang fina-follow po natin ay yung absorption costing. Kasi nga, mas naka-align ito sa GAAP. Yung absorption costing kasi iba yung classification nila, di ba? Because absorption costing classifies expenses by functional category, cost behavior relative to changes in activity cannot be observed from an absorption costing income statement or management report. Why? Kasi nga, di ba, by functions tayo dito, hindi naman by cost category. Kaya ang hirap i-identify, no? Ang hirap i-observe ng cost classification according to behavior. Kung tumaas ba yung production or yung activity level, ano yung effect, ano yung reaction nitong mga cost na ito? Tataas din ba yung ating mga expenses? Or pagbababa yung ating production level or yung ating activity level, bababa din ba ang mga expenses mo? Hindi natin yan nakikita pag ang ginagamit natin yung absorption costing. Understanding cost behavior is extremely important for many managerial activities such as your budgeting, cost volume profit analysis na pag-uusapan natin na separate video lecture, and relevant costing. Okay? Kaya nga, for internal reporting purposes, for management reporting, okay, it is critical na dinidistinguish natin yung mga costs by behavior. So yun ang usually ginagamit for presentation for internal reporting, for management reporting. Okay, because it is very useful for budgeting, CVP analysis, and relevant costing for proper decision making and analysis internally. Okay? So yun po muna yung aking video lecture on the conceptual part ng ating discussion on the activity, tawag nito, activity tuloy, absorption costing versus, ano nga ito? Absorption costing versus variable costing. Nag-blank ako bigla. Please let me know guys or class if you have any questions para ma-address ko ang inyong mga katanungan. Kasi sa susunod na video lecture, computation na tayo. Okay? So I'll see you agad sa susunod na video lecture. Bye-bye.